Hello, hello, if you are new here, my name is Echo. Welcome to my glorious channel. I do fancy art things here on the interwebs. I'm very excited about this video because this is something that I've wanted to make for a very long time, and that is why today I'm going to be showing you how to draw a dragon. We're gonna go in depth in this one. How to draw a dragon. I want to see your skills of an artist. Before we get into it, I do want to thank War Dragons for helping me put all this together and for sponsoring this video. Seriously, thank you for the access to like all of the concept art. It's just been fantastic to go through. The artwork in this game is just so beautiful. War Dragons is this mobile real-time strategy game where players will directly control dragons to attack enemy bases. You get to build your own dragon army, and then you can form guilds with your friends and you can work together to launch co-op attacks and defend your teammates. Also, if you do download this game, which you should, my guild is Weird Dragons and I still need like 48 more team members, so join me. I play it like every day, so it'll be fun. It'll be a grand old fun time. Let's destroy everything. There's also this new feature that just launched called Atlas. It's a fully 3D persistent world where players can forge alliances with other teams and then conquer land from those they deem to be enemies. Let's conquer the world together. Join my Weird Dragons guild. We will conquer everything. Players work with their teammates to build up dragon-led armies and fight for land and secure lucrative rewards while bolstering strongholds and strengthening their positions. Teamwork. I want to expand my guild before I start messing around with Atlas, so please help me make my guild giant and wonderful. One of my favorite things about this game is that the more you play, the more dragons you unlock, and you can actually use the 3D models in the game as drawing references. If you go to the Dragon's Den, you can actually spin them around and look at them from like a ton of different angles, which is very useful, especially if you don't know that much about dragon anatomy. I'm already at level 29 and I have 34 dragons to use as reference, but there's over 150 in the game that you can collect, all with different attack styles and classes and abilities. So I've gone ahead and I've broken up this video into 6 main parts. There's the body, the head, the legs, the wings, the tail, and then general cosmetics. Things like scales and horns. So from here, we're gonna go ahead and start by drawing the body. Before we get too far into this, we really need to stop and discuss the difference between a dragon and a wyvern. A dragon is a mythical monster somewhat like a giant reptile that is generally characterized as having 4 legs, 2 wings, a tail, and the ability to breathe fire. A wyvern is like a dragon in that it has 2 wings, a tail, and the ability to breathe fire. However, a wyvern is generally characterized as having only 2 legs, kind of like a bat or a hawk. Or chicken. There's a huge debate on whether or not wyverns should be classified as dragons, so for the sake of this video, I'm just going to be referencing them separately. Whether you're drawing a dragon or a wyvern will have some weight on the way that you draw the body, but for the most part, you're just going to want to make it kind of like a worm that's really thick in the middle. It'll curve around the neck and then get larger where the chest of the dragon is, and then continue to get thinner until it reaches the tail. The way that you draw this shape is going to determine the build that your dragon has. If you draw your lines fairly straight, then the dragon is probably going to be lower to the ground, more like a lizard or a Komodo dragon. But if you draw the curves more like this, then you're going to end up with a more upright dragon that looks a bit stronger. Have in mind that you can pretty much start with any basic shape and still get a pretty good looking dragon out of it. If you want some examples, then you can start with one of these. So now we're going to talk about how to draw the head. So the basic shape of most dragons' heads is kind of like a backwards cone, kind of like a top mark on a long V. But if you change the shape slightly, then you can come up with tons of completely different dragon faces. You can make the snout sharp and pointy like Frigg, or you can make it flat and blunt like Trollus. You can make it pointy, or you can make it round. You have a lot of options. Once you have the basic shape, you can start dividing the mouth between the top and the bottom jaw, as well as trying to form the back of the head. Here are some examples if you want to try and work from those. Legs and claws. Legs and claws. Legs and claws, legs and claws. So now that we've got the basic form of our dragon down, we can move on to the legs and the claws. Remember that depending on if you're drawing a dragon or a wyvern, you'll be drawing either 2 legs or 4. Now, the joints on the back legs of any 4-legged animal can be kind of hard to remember, so this is what I do. I'll pick a spot on the back middle of the body where the hips are supposed to be, and then I'll draw a zigzag. The zigzag has to go towards the head, and then towards the tail, and then towards the head again. This will give you a basic guide that will help you draw the back legs. Another helpful thing to do is to think about it in terms of your own legs. Your leg starts at your hips, and then goes forward to your knees, and then back to your heel, and then forward to your toes. If you're going to draw the front legs on your dragon, then you're only going to need 2 main guidelines, and these are going to be the exact opposite to the legs. You should pick a starting point in the mid-upper torso and then go towards the tail and then towards the head. It also helps to think about this one in terms of your own arm joints. Your upper limbs start from your shoulder and then go back to your elbow and then forward to your wrist, just like a dragon. If you try to think about dragon limbs in terms of your own anatomy, then it should help you remember which direction all of the limbs are supposed to go. Once you have a guide, you can decide if you want to draw your legs very thick and make your dragon very large and strong, or you can make them very thin and delicate and spidery. It's up to you. Make your own adventure. At that point, you're going to be putting on the claws, like these little feet kind of things. And then from here, you're going to want to choose kind of how many claws you want to add to your dragon. A lot of people draw dragons kind of like this, where they'll have one claw in the back and then a bunch of claws going forward. This is another one that's kind of open to interpretation. You can give your dragon as many claws as you so desire. I'm going to say about 4 or 5 is probably plenty. This is what it's going to look like from the front, and this is what it's going to look like from the side. Human hands are just really lame dragon claws. Now let's talk about the wings. When it comes to drawing wings, there are a couple ways that you can make them, and part of that is going to depend on whether you're drawing a wingling dragon or a wyvern. If you're just drawing a dragon, then more likely than not the wings are either going to be on top of the dragon or going up in the air. But if you're drawing a wyvern, the wings can either be up in the air like a bird, or they can be down on the ground for crawling, kind of like a bat. When I'm drawing wings, I have this really weird trick that I use to remember how to draw them, and I know this is going to sound silly, but I imagine an arm holding 3 samurai swords upside down. Just imagine a dragon with a beefy arm coming out of the back of his neck, holding some samurai swords. And that will give you the basic shape for a dragon's wing. It's a trick that I picked up from a master dragon artist. It's stupid, but it works. It's also important to note that you don't have to draw wings at all. Lots of dragon designs just don't have wings and more so resemble flying serpents. You can even get creative and add a second pair of wings if you wanted to. The world is your oyster, but less gross. And now let's talk about the tail. The tail is pretty simple, but you still do have a lot of options to consider. You can leave the tail plain and simple, kind of like a lizard. You can make it spiked, you can give it horns, you can put an axe on it if you wanted to. You can make the tail a freaking sword. It really just depends on what looks best with the rest of your dragon. And now we move on to the cosmetics. So this is where we get into the countless extra embellishments that you can add to your dragon to make it look more unique. If you want the dragon to have horns, you can put it on the top or bottom of its snout. You can use it to form the back of the skull. You can put it down the dragon's spine. You can put it on their wings, or you can just put them everywhere. Like, everywhere. You can also give your dragon a theme, something like nature, or crystals, or phoenix fire, or spooky scary skeletons. And then you just apply those elements to your dragon's frame, in whatever creative way you can think of. You can make the dragon's teeth hanging out of its mouth, you can give them armor, or scales, or scars, or spinities. As long as you have a rough drawing of your basic dragon's shape, the possibilities are pretty much endless. And that is pretty much everything. Those are essentially the fundamentals of drawing a dragon. The last thing I wanted to do before I go is to actually make an example by applying all of these principles and drawing one of the dragons from War Dragons. And I cannot think of a more appropriate dragon to draw than Chimerac, the Frankenstein dragon. I love what Halloween does to the world. Chimerac is like my favorite dragon right now because he's this just beautiful mishmash of dragon parts. I want to read you the description of Chimerac in the game because it's just beautifully poetic. Where magic failed, butchers have achieved through scraping battlefields, unearthing graves, and harvesting the bones of the dead. Chimerac is a creature of pure agony and pain and seeks to unleash the pain it feels upon the world. How dark is that? Surrender to the bolt of Chimerac. I really hope I'm not saying Chimerac wrong. In terms of the body, Chimerac has kind of like a round, lower to the ground body. It kind of looks like it's more on guard than proud, like some of the other dragons, which makes sense. Where most of the other dragons have like spikes or horns around the back of their skull, Chimerac's head actually blends right into its body, somewhat like a bird, and also more like a bird, Chimerac has kind of like a beak. However, unlike a bird, Chimerac has very sharp teeth, and one of its eyes is actually barred across. When it comes to the legs and claws, because Chimerac is like this giant mishmash of body parts, it has claws from different dragons. For the most part, Chimerac has 3 claws on each of its feet, except for one foot that only has 2, because once again, mishmash of dragon parts. Now this dragon has extremely large wings, so when you imagine that arm holding a bunch of samurai swords, it actually has to hold 4 samurai swords, plus a 5th one, coming out of its elbow. I also want to point out that Chimerac has 2 different wings. They're not from the same dragon. Chimerac's tail is really cool because it's a bunch of spikes, but also an axe. Just look at it. There's an axe in there. So now that we've got all the foundational stuff, we can move on to the extra embellishments. There are a bunch of random embellishments that make this dragon its beautiful, unique self. For starters, Chimerac actually has a collar and these arm braces that are just very electrified, probably to keep it alive and control it. I don't know. It's a Frankenstein dragon. Electricity. It makes sense. Another very important embellishment to any Frankenstein type creature is stitches, because you gotta hold the body parts together somehow. Now, Chimerac's wings come from 2 different dragons, which is also why one of them has more scales than the other. Another embellishment that this dragon has is that it's covered with horns and spikes. Chimerac's right wing actually has more spikes on the top of it than its left wing. And then at that point, we're just gonna throw on some chiaroscuro shading and we're gonna call it done. Ta-da! Beat that strong bad. Thank you so much for watching this video and making it all the way to the end. You deserve like 500 awesome points for that. I'm gonna go play War Dragons and add like 48 people to my guild. Please come join me. There will be a link in the description for you to download this game. But I think that's everything, so hopefully I will see you later. Bye. In a state of emergency, who was I trying to be? Oh, I love my Halloween setup. This is a nice Halloween setup. I'm happy with this.